Okay, you're set.
All right, Michelle, are you there?
Awesome.
Great.
Thank
you
you.
so much for joining us. Hi.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, everyone. It's my pleasure to be sharing today's presentation with you all on how to talk to landlords and get more listings. So this is a strategy that I've used for 3 years now with high producing realtors across California to help them gain even more listings and continue to position themselves as a trusted resource and expert in their community. So we can go ahead and jump right in. Can you guys all see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Oh, disclosures first. So I know this is a lot of small print, but basically what it says is, like all good things in life, real estate investments and strategies are not guaranteed. So please be sure to consult your tax and legal professionals prior to making any major decisions. A little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. So we'll do an introduction, kind of what COVID has done to our marketplace, a perfect storm for 1031 exchange, some 1031 exchange options that are considered new, and then strategic partnerships and win-win situations. A little bit about me. So I'm not sure if anybody wakes up in the morning and goes, when I grow up, I want to be a real estate agent, right? But between the people that have been in the business for a really long time, it's a lot of hard work, but it also comes with having incredible benefits, like how sky's the limit on your income, creating a schedule that works for you and your family, and that 1099 income allows us to get the best deductions against our earned income. So when I first started in the business, I was very fortunate to be the only Mandarin speaking agent in my office. And so our office did luxury real estate coastal properties, residential in Newport Beach and Irvine. And so from there, I was always kind of like the top pick to be involved in all cash buyers when they wanted to come from Asia to purchase those coastal properties. And so what I would do was, after we helped them buy their main property, right, they would also ask that we help find them investment properties. So from there, we would find like a potential investment property, do the income cap rate calculation, and then also the potential returns. You guys know how it goes. And then we would go out and buy 10, 20, 30 properties. And then we would basically help find that suitable tenant, lease it out, do property management. And so that's kind of how I got started in the business on the residential side. And since then, you know, my ultra wealthy clients always would continue to challenge me to find them all types of different real estate investments to help gain and build their wealth, as well as to be able to avoid taxes on those capital gains and to build, again, their generational wealth through their portfolios. And so that leads us to our presentation today, which I'll be sharing with you some of the best real estate tools an agent can utilize to learn and to earn more listings and to become the trusted advisor for your clients for a lifetime. So currently right now, I am part of GD Commercial. I help run the private equity arm. We also basically fundraise for a lot of the large developers here. But for today's information, I'll be going over some of the 1031 exchange options because it's a super hot topic. I think the market is perfect for it. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. Let's see. Okay. A little bit about the company, just so you guys are familiar. We have two sides of the business. So one is the security side, the other side is the real estate side. So the real estate side is strictly commercial. We don't do anything residential. But then on the security side, it's called First Guardian Group. And they primarily use us as a 1031 exchange replacement property option for people who would like to purchase properties out of state without any management hassles. And so the company has done over $3 billion of real estate transactions, served over 5,000 clients, and we have a combined total of over 100 years of real estate experience. So people come to us again for 1031 exchange solutions, as well as the potential to market to our commercial real estate I would say investors group. So if you have any commercial listings, we'd be happy to share that across our platform as well. So right here. So we can jump right into today's presentation. To efficiently plan for what's to come, we really need to take a look at today's current real estate atmosphere, right? According to USA Today and the 2018 census, 54.8% is the percentage of owner-occupied homes in California. Well, this probably isn't a surprise, but I'm here to confirm that we do rank second to last on percentage of ownership across our 50 states. And with New York behind us at 53.7%. So just to give you an average for the national average, it's homeownership is at 65% on an average national level. And then with West Virginia being at the top of the list at 72.5%. So they're number one on home ownership. So given that we are in the Bay Area and home ownership is closely tied to the housing costs, it's easy to understand why our home ownership rates are the lowest next to New York. But how is this affecting us now? So this is the result, right? So it's never been more clear in our real estate market today that there's no inventory causing some major bidding wars. It's even getting more expensive with every sale, and this therefore keeping more people in rental properties for the foreseeable future. And also on the investor side for our landlords, we're seeing very low cash flows in return for that very high purchase price. So as listing agents, we're often asked to deliver more inventory to the market, but how do we find more inventory, right? So going back to our 54.8% of home ownership in California, this means about 45% of the homes are rental properties. And so for now, with the pandemic, many landlords are being forced to take a look at their rental properties and reevaluate based upon traditional real estate fundamentals. And so here's where we go today. The tide is turning. In the past, as long as you could afford to keep your property, tenants will continue to pay off the mortgage, and appreciation will create generational wealth and, well, at least a nice retirement cushion, right? And for the most part, this might still be true. To be able to talk to landlords in a meaningful way, we will need to place ourselves in their shoes. So let's take a look at our current landlord atmosphere. And with the pandemic going on for a little bit over a year now, during this time, fundamental landlords should be asking themselves these questions, right? Do I have enough cash flow and reserves to solve any issues that arise? So let's say if the tenant doesn't pay rent and you can't evict them, are you in danger of losing your property to the bank? Well, with the forbearance, you might not be for a few months, but what happens when that's over? Right? And then number two is the market growing like it's supposed to. So real estate cycles, we traditionally span over 8 to 11 years. We're on year 13 now from 2008, just something to think about. The government is also printing money, as we know. So what does this mean for the economy? And also, do I want to wait to find out? Number three, are there any red flags that could affect future cash flow, like rent control or like just cause evictions that we had in 2019 and early 2020? Right? Am I getting the anticipated tax considerations that I'm planning for? So when you own real estate for 27 and a half years, you'll have used up all of your depreciation. So there's a lot of landlords in California who's been holding on to properties for a very long time. So sometimes if your depreciation is all wiped clean, which is your best tax shelter, it might be a good idea to do a 1031 exchange to add more building so that you can depreciate over time. My goal for you at the end of this presentation is to have the knowledge and talking points you'll need to be able to properly advise a California landlord who is uncertain or on the fence about selling their rental property. So without getting into what's happening with COVID-19 and eviction moratoriums and forbearance, let's take a look at some of the risks or what kind of red flags we are seeing here in California in the last 2 years. So what does this mean? Prior to the pandemic, the legislation had passed what's known as Tenant Protection Act of 2019. I'm not going to go over it in detail. I'm sure you guys have all heard about it. I just wanted to highlight that, that what that act did was essentially put all of California under rent control, right? And it also put a section in there that specified if and when you are able to evict a tenant. So currently the act doesn't apply to smaller mom and pop investors on the residential side, but this is usually the beginning of passing more restrictive laws down the line that may very well likely include all residential properties, rental properties in the near future. So to really drive this idea home, I want all of us to imagine that California in itself is like one huge HOA, where California is a 200 unit, maybe townhome and single family community governed by one HOA, where let's say 54.8% of us are homeowners and the other residents are renters, right? So in your experience as real estate professionals, what does that mean when you see HOA docs saying that here's the percentage breakdown of homeowners and renters? So, well, if you've been in the industry long enough, it's pretty automatic, right? You'll see that there's less pride in homeownership in that community. That translates to waiting maybe 10 years to repaint instead of typical 7 years. There's usually more termite damage on the eaves of the trimming, less meticulous landscaping, and deferred maintenance. And all the while, this HOA may very likely cave to requests that the renters who are now very close to the 50% majority. And we all know in California, it is a losing battle for majority of the landlords in any situation. So on a very macro scale, that's what we're dealing with in California, where many landlords are thinking, is it worth the risk to keep my rental properties here? It's fine that I want to live here, yes, but is it worth the risk? And is it worth the time to invest it elsewhere where maybe it could have higher returns? So let's go ahead and continue down this landlord journey. Okay, the terrible T's. This is here what we call the landlord's terrible T's of real estate. Termites, toilets, tenants, taxes, and trash, right? So COVID-19 has really exacerbated the risk that landlords face, and many landlords are just one bad tenant away from a lawsuit or ugly squatter situation. Maybe they're already in one. And so now that we've presented with all the potential problems a landlord may face today, this kind of creates what I call a perfect storm for the 1031 exchange. So here's the good stuff. Here's where we can be part of the solution to loosen up as much inventory as possible for the pent-up demand by creating win-win-win scenario for everyone involved. We all know the concept of buying low and selling high. And so this is a great time to really capture the seller's market where the buyers can also enjoy the super low interest rates, which gives them higher buying power. And so the landlord then can do a 1031 exchange, redeploy their highly appreciated assets or equity to a better performing asset, giving them higher cash flows, returns, and tax shelter. And so then lastly, our community benefits as well, right? Because we'll have pride of ownership wherever we go. So here we are, let's see. So let's just do a quick refresher on 1031. I'm not going to spend too much time because I know you guys all understand what it is, but basically it allows you to defer and avoid capital gains taxes when you sell an investment property and reinvest the proceeds from a sale to certain time limits, with like kind or greater, for like kind property for greater or equal to greater value. Okay, so let's take a look at if you weren't to do a 1031 exchange, what does this mean in terms of taxation? So you have the up to 20% federal capital gains tax, right? And then you also have the 3.8 Obamacare. And then a lot of people forget about this. This is the 25% of depreciation recapture. So whether or not you've been taking depreciation on your rental properties, Uncle Sam's going to want that full 25% back. And then you also have the 13.3 tax rate up to 13.3% state tax rate. So overall, you're probably looking at about a 30 to 40% owed in taxes. And where once you pay it, it's gone. You can't make it work for you and you can't get it back, right? So that's why a lot of people do like to take advantage of the 1031. So they also say that you have to be able to exchange it for like-kind properties. What does like-kind mean? So if you sell a rental property that is a single family or a condo or townhome, you don't have to buy another townhome or single family, right? You can trade it into an apartment, into healthcare, self-storage, retail, student housing, industrial. The list actually goes on. There's much more than this. And so what doesn't qualify as like-kind is your primary residence, second homes, any flips, and also real estate development. Those don't qualify. So for the 1031 exchange, we have 3 easy rules to remember. You got to make sure you purchase something greater, equal or greater value. Number 2, you got to make sure that you spend all the equity. So you take all of those proceeds and you put it into the next property. The third one is a little bit tricky, but it's not that tricky. It just means that you have to replace all of your debt. So if you had debt, that means you had to replace your debt. If you're not taking the loan as much loan, you can actually be offset by cash. So you don't have to take too much of a loan if you don't want to. You just have to replace all the ones that you had with new loan or cash. We also have our time requirements, right? So you have, as soon as you close on that property, you have 45 days to identify, and then you have a total of 180 days to close. With the market as high as it is today, it's actually really hard to justify a 1031 exchange when you don't have a good exit strategy in the form of a replacement property. So a lot of my investors say, well, why should I sell when the market is high and I'm just going to have to buy something just as high, and then my property taxes are through the roof because, you know, it doesn't translate over. And so with this, a lot of my sophisticated investors, what they will do is they will sell high, do a 1031 exchange, and trade up, meaning they will be exchanging for properties with higher cash flows, less risky assets, getting into class A or B buildings that are usually brand new or maybe 20 years young to have less maintenance risk, and also into better neighborhoods, landlord-friendly states, and also adding more property to depreciate for tax shelters. So here's a bird's eye view of what we saw in 2020, right? To get a really good idea of the different asset classes and what landlords are seeing across the different asset classes, here's the ones that did the best. So multifamily or apartments still did the best out of all sectors. It's a necessity of life. Everybody needs a place to live. And although the C class were impacted, the A and B classes actually did really well, because if you think about the tenants who are in the class A and class B apartments, they're usually people who have white collar jobs. So they're able to go online, continue and work for their jobs. Class C, they're usually a blue class community. And so when COVID hit, they were the ones who were hit the worst. Industrial had done really well. And self-storage, actually, I would say self-storage is right alongside multifamily. It's really recession resilient. There's no issues on, you know, people not paying rent, because as soon as you miss a payment, the next time you do, they're going to go ahead and tow everything out of that storage. And so they never have any rent collection problems. They did really well in the last year. Healthcare was a mixed bag. A lot of the necessity medical properties did really well. But with the high focus on COVID-19, other medical actually didn't do so well. So it's kind of a mixed bag there. So now that we, excuse me, now that we've taken a look at our current atmosphere and also what the landlords are struggling with, let's go ahead and get into some of the solutions, right? So DST, what is a DST? A DST stands for Delaware Statutory Trust, and it's just a way of taking title to a property, just like how you would take title as an individual, as an LLC, or tenants in common, etc. So DST is formed for investment purposes, and therefore DST is part of the, our IRS code back in 2004. And so it's been around for about 17 years now. And basically it's an entity for federal tax purposes. What it does is it allows up to 2,000 investors to pool their money together as a fractional owner of income producing properties. So you can do, what's really cool about the DST is you can go in and out with 1031 exchange. So let's say you sell a property for $1 million, right? Or your client sells a property for $1 million. They want to do a 1031 into a DST. And then once the DST actually sells, usually within 5 to 7 years, you do another 1031. So you can do a 1031 in and you can then do a 1031 out. So after the DST sells, if they wanted to purchase, let's say, another single family home or like-kind property, they totally can. Minimum investments start at $25,000. Cash flow distributions are paid monthly. And so a DST typically is in a form of, you know, any type of asset class that's institutional. So here we have a CVS pharmacy, and then we also have a huge multifamily development. We'll go into some of the details a little bit later. But all you have to know is, as for today, is that the cash flows are just the same as if you were to collect on a rental property, right? So it's paid monthly, and then you actually don't have to have any of the management headaches that we talked about the terribilities. There's also no loan qualifying or guarantees by the investor. So the property is actually purchased first by the sponsor or the trustee, and then from there, they go ahead and liquidate their interest in the form of a down payment, usually 30 to 40% of the value of the building, in which our investors can then 1031 exchange into a fractional interest of. And so what they're getting for this would be typically around a 4.5 to a 6% net return on their equity. And so what's the cool thing is you don't have to qualify for it. So you don't have to put any income or statements or anything together. They can typically close within 3 to 5 days. And so you don't have to wait the 30 days for the property to close. And then the tax returns are filed on a Schedule E, which means you get all the deductions. You get depreciation write-off, interest write-off, even though you're not on the hook for the loan. You also get all the management and operational expenses to write off. So it's not a K1, it's just on taxes, it looks like just another rental property. It's only available for accredited investors only. Just to qualify, you just have to have a net worth of over $1 million or more, not including your primary residence, or if you make over $200,000 gross a year for individuals and $300,000 gross as a couple filing jointly. And so in the Bay Area, I think anywhere else in the world that might not flow very well, but a lot of us, in the Bay Area do qualify under the accredited investors only rule. So keep in mind, just so we can take a look side by side what the difference of maybe investing in a passive DST investment versus an active landlord situation, what the differences are. So as a DST investor or landlord, you will never receive a call from a guest or a tenant at the property. As you know, as an active landlord, you will receive a call every time something breaks down. There's never a capital call of any kind for passive landlords, meaning that, you would never receive a call for you to wire in more money for the property. They have to be fully capitalized up front, and they can never ask the investors for any more money, which means they have to have proper reserve set up, right? Otherwise, the sponsor has to come out of pocket for any other expenses. Active landlords, they have to pay out of pocket for every maintenance or repairs. Even with insurance, you have to pay the deductible. With passive landlords, you can leverage the institutional grade professional management with complete track record transparency. So this is probably my favorite out of all of the benefits of DSTs, because you won't be able to hire any property manager who will have every single property that they've ever managed on the list, and then signifying the date of purchase or the date of the managing, how much that they've returned to the investor or the landlord, and also when they sold and how much they sold it for. So it's literally, they have to, under the DST Internal Revenue Code, they have to basically put down the property address of every deal that they've done, when they bought it, how much they bought it for, if they've ever lost investor money, if they were ever late on investor distributions, and also how much they sold it for later on, basically, and see if they were close to their projections. So I like that a lot because you can really see if they are experienced or not. Legal fees are needed to hire an attorney or for tenant problems. So if you're an active landlord, you kind of have to do everything by yourself, right? Passive landlords on the DST side, they can invest as low as $25,000. And for us in the Bay Area, we typically have to put a 5 to 20% down on any investment property, right? And so that's kind of a big chunk. If you were to buy $1 million property, you're looking at $200,000 with a 20% down. With that $200,000, you can literally purchase 4 different properties and diversify your risk and not have to qualify for the loan. Returns are 4.5 to 6% annually, and it's paid monthly with the upside as well. So you as an investor, if you were to purchase the DST, you are actually in ownership of, right? And so that way you can also get the appreciation, which we typically see about 3 to 4%. And this is really conservative. In the last few years, it's really been closer to a 5 to 8% appreciation. And so here, as an active landlord in California, if you guys had ever helped clients purchase rental properties here, you'll know that the returns are looking like 1 to 3% annually on a residential property, if you're lucky. And then out of state, if they wanted to go out of state, you can easily find something for 7 to 10%. But again, you have to manage it yourself, or you have to have a property manager, right? So here is that side by side. So let's now take a look at an example of what a past offering looks like. So typically this is a 4.5 to 6%. West Creek was one of our most popular properties last year, and they just purchased it in October 2019. And so, like I said, the full transparency rings true here, how much they purchased it for, how much they're raising in terms of equity. So basically what happened was when they purchased it for 113 million, they got a loan of 58%. So it's not super highly leveraged, which is also good and conservative. And then they also have the lowest rate possible for a commercial purchase. And so that's 3.47, which is super low. And so now that they have it ready and that's stabilized with tenants of up to, I think, typically it's around 90 to 95% occupancy. So once they reach the 90 to 95% occupancy, they'll go ahead and say, hey, Michelle, we have, $47 million worth of this property that your investors can go ahead and exchange into. And so then they'll put together all the information for us, and then we can review the due diligence. And then that's pretty much what our company does, right? And you don't have to do any of this. We basically get the introduction, and then you can also be alongside every step of the way. And then if they decide that doesn't work for them, that's totally fine too. So we'll go through all of this information, and here's some of the property highlights, just so you guys understand kind of what type of caliber properties we are looking at when we talk about DSTs. So for this one specifically, it's 373 unit. It's a Class A multifamily building, and it's across 23 acres and constructed in 2018. It's got all the crazy cool amenities that you would probably see as a resort at a resort. There's basically climate controlled rentable storage units on site, bike storage, coffee bar, conference meeting rooms, literally, everything. Including some of these properties even have like an Amazon locker now, because that's kind of the trend these days, right? With a lot of packages and things like that being delivered. There's also like a billiards and pools and the full 9 yards. So you can see the picture of the property here, and then also the interior of a staged area of kind of where they have their community centers. So that's kind of what a DST looks like. Typically on an offering, you'll have 3 documents to take a look at. It is one being just a summary, and then a video, and then also the full kind of, I would say, purchase agreement for the DST in case they wanted to move forward. So who should you consider DSTs for? You should consider them for clients who desire potential for monthly passive income, people who don't want to manage anymore, right? They maybe amassed a good portfolio in the several years that they were real estate investing, and they're like so tired of investing. Now they're ready to kind of live the golden years, the good life, just don't want any management hassles and just want the mailbox money. They also want the potential for appreciation and equity preservation, and then the ability to diversify their portfolio across different states easily, and being able to kind of just collect the rent. Okay. So let's strategize. Here are the top 4 common uses that I see for DSTs. For the 1031 exchange, we can actually identify it as a primary property if they're like, okay, I really like this idea, let's go ahead and do it. We can also do it as a backup property. So as a backup property, this is very interesting, and they're going to thank you for it, because just in case the first or second property doesn't work out, if you are past the 45-day identification period, and for some reason on the 46th day, both properties that you had identified did not work out, you're going to be paying taxes, right? There's no way to identify a brand new property. It's just, that's that. And so what I always say, don't let your clients go into a 1031 exchange without at least having a DST or 2 identified as a backup, because if something doesn't pan out, then at least they will still be able to fall back on the DST. Loan or equity boot. So let's say you have a client who sold $1 million property. You are out there finding the replacement property for them, and you found the perfect replacement property for $750. Now, what do you do with the remaining $250, right? We can use the DST as a soak up for any equity or loan boot that's left over. So that's also another way that I've seen DST used. This is quite efficient. Lastly, we do have 20% of DST investors who are cash investors. So they don't have a 1031 exchange. It's just like the idea. They don't want to own, property one by one. And this is kind of an easy way for them to put money away. Also a good idea. So here's how DSTs have done during COVID-19, right? So we're in close communication with all the DST sponsors to stay current on all property performance. Currently, like we mentioned, multifamily and storage DSTs are the best performing. And then during uncertainty, having the proper reserves allocated to each property will mean just a lot of protection for the investors. So a lot of our properties in the DST realm last year, when the pandemic hit, we were really, really well capitalized on the reserves. And so a lot of our investors, they didn't feel a dip in their income at all. Class A or B properties generally attract professional tenants who are likely to meet rental obligations. And this is what we saw basically last year into this year as well. So here's what the DST closing timeline looks like. To make a reservation, you can basically call us up and then we go over with your client or with you which DSTs are most likely to want to identify on their ID sheet. And then we can go ahead and call those sponsors. All that equity is being reserved for when you guys do close, for you to be able to close easily on the DST. So there's basically, it's just a safe haven for somebody who is just not sure if they have a clear exit plan for their 1031 exchange. You're not obligated to close. So once you make the reservation, it's completely free for your client and there's no deposit required. So let's say if the properties that you identified on your first or second choice closes, no worries. You just let us know and then we can go ahead and let go of that reservation for another investor to come in. A sold rental property. So once you sell your rental property, we basically have that ID sheet filled out with the key qualified intermediary, which is your escrow, and then also the DST filled out. And then within 3 to 5 days, that'll close. And then within 30 days after closing, your client will receive their first rental check or direct deposit on their investment. Right. So here are some common landlord objections for not listing, right? So basically the number one thing that we're seeing is, well, I don't want to pay capital taxes on the appreciation. So we already have a solution to that, which is the 1031 exchange. And then we also have like the nice landlord who often feels like they can't abandon their tenants. There's really nothing that you can do here, but maybe to show them how their property is really doing. And so if they're leaving any money on the table. And that brings us to our last and surprisingly most common here in the Bay Area is miscalculating your returns. So whenever a landlord tells you that that they're netting more than, let's say, 5% on the rental property, you might want to dig a little bit deeper. When I work with my realtor partners who have clients that are considering a 1031 exchange, I help put together what I call a rental property analysis. And so this analysis will serve as an incredible tool for us to show the landlords if they are leaving any money on the table and if listing the property and doing a 1031 exchange makes sense for them. So let's take a look at that. Here's a look inside the report. I basically help calculate what the current returns look like, and we do a side-by-side comparison on how much more potential they have if they decided to do a 1031 exchange and to list the property with you. And if they do decide to do an exchange, this is really based upon a 5% return. So it could be a DST, it could be any other rental property. So to calculate your net return, first you go ahead and take your net income, which is over here. So this breakdown is really simple and you guys could do this too. And so it's like your income, which is your rental income. This property rents out for $4,000 a month. You have your property taxes, your other expenses like your insurance, your maintenance and improvements, as well as your property management fee if you have one. We always bake in a 5% vacancy fee just because with every property turn, you're looking at about maybe 3 to 4 weeks or 4 to maybe 2 to 4 weeks of vacancy. You also have your loan information right here. Once that gets paid off, that's your equity. And then your estimated current cash flow, which is your income minus your expenses is your cash flow, right? And so your equity is whatever this property value is. You guys are the ones who give me this number because you'll say, well, Michelle, in today's market, I'm thinking about selling it at this much. And so I go, okay, well then how much left do they have on their loan balance? So once you minus their loan balance, for this example is 200,000, they leave with an equity of 1.2 million, right? And so common mistakes when people calculate their returns is they're not using the current property value. So they're basing their returns on the initial down payment for when they first purchased the home. And also they don't really deduct all the expenses. And so when it comes down to it, it's really hard to hit above the 5% annual net return figure here in the Bay Area if you're doing your calculations correctly, right? And so landlords are essentially investors, and a good investor will periodically take a look at their portfolio to see if their investments are producing. So if we can be a few steps ahead of the game and kind of show the investor or landlord that they can make an additional $10, $20, $50,000 more a year by doing a 1031 exchange and capitalizing on this seller's market by listing the property with you, that might be a no-brainer, especially if they already have problem tenants or if they're just getting tired of managing properties like the terrible T's that we were talking about before. And so if you guys have any questions on this calculation or percentage, just let me know. I kind of go through maybe 5 of these on a weekly basis. So it's just some more information on the report. They'll have a nice chart. And then really, we also bake in your closing costs. So if your commission is 6%, we bake it in here so they know that, the net proceeds are really after all closing costs. So we can adjust this as needed based upon your guys's commission structure. So here also, again, current, potential cash flow versus your potential cash flow if you were to do a 1031. So how do we get more listings? Now is the perfect time to start having conversations with landlords or investors with rental properties. So 2 years ago, I started to work with a high producing agent in Danville, actually, who farmed non-owner occupied properties. And at the end of that year in 2019, she earned 6 new listings totaling over 150 of extra commissions for her 2018 with this strategy. And so with our perfect storm for 1031 exchanges, landlords can now sell high, defer all capital gains, double or triple their income, get additional tax shelter to shelter that income, and then you can bring the listing to market, creating more inventory and increasing your sales volume this year. So here we are working together. Here's how we work together. So typically whenever I have a realtor who wants to see if DSTs is the right fit for their client, it's just a really easy 30-minute discovery call on Zoom. And then we can go over afterwards some of the 1031 exchange timelines so everybody's on the same page, maybe some common mistakes, and that way your investor and landlord can avoid them. And then also the DST options if that's something that they're looking to get more into. We can also pull the rental property analysis, and then after that, we'll go ahead and email them the full list of DSTs for them to review, and we'll basically make any reservations on their behalf after that. And that way, the DSTs are ready to go once you guys close on their rental property sale. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to go over the initial DST potential benefits. This is always a popular list because people kind of are just getting warmed up to the idea. So it's been around for 17 years now, right? And so currently, you get all the tax benefits with a 1031 exchange. The trustee is the sole borrower and accepts the loan liability. So the sponsor is basically the trustee, which is also the same as the property manager. So you don't need to qualify for any loan or submit any financials to be underwritten. There's cost savings, which means that you can highly leverage all of the professionals in place, right? They have basically 1 handy or 2 handymen that's on payroll, and they service all 300 units. You don't have to pay for each of those plumbing issues that usually cost $100 to $150 each time they come. You can also close within just 3 to 5 days, and then it's really, really great for that backup in case your primary selections don't pan out. It's got historically reliable cash flow. If you lose, let's say 15% of your tenants, like what we saw in March and March and April of last year, your maybe 5% return drops down to 4.85 instead of, let's say, if you had a rental property where there's just one family and you lose that entire income stream, that's 100% of your income lost, right? If that family doesn't pay. There's no capital calls allowed, which means once you invest, you're not going to be getting a call saying, hey, I'm sorry, the roof caved in and now we need a new roof. Not allowed. Streamlined decision-making. The trustee makes all the decisions. There's no requirement for unanimous approvals. The DST historically was actually put together after the 2008 crash. What happened there, or actually before, but what happened there was the TIC deals, the tenants in common deals, where you can have up to 35 investors taking title to one property. They were stuck in that property if just one person didn't want to sell. So let's say you were in 2007, and you're like, okay, the market's really hot, I want to sell. And there's one investor in that group who said, no, actually, I want to keep holding on. And then you hold on past 2008, what happens? Right? Sometimes you lose the property to the bank because you decided to hang on when the market is down and you can't afford to keep it. And so with the trustee making all decisions, when you're pooling together, they are the professionals. They look at the market and all the demographics on a quarterly basis in the market to see if this is the year to sell. And basically, there's no voting rights for investors. You basically place your money with the professionals, just like how you would if you were to go to a doctor, right? You just trust them to be able to make that. And because of their full transparency of the track records, we only work with companies that have been around for 10 to 50 years with complete transparency on those track records on how they performed. Lower minimum investments may also permit investors to fully diversify. So again, the 25,000 will allow you to go across different states, different properties to fully diversify into that diversify your risks and get multiple streams of that income from the different properties. Okay, key restrictions. So again, this could be a good or bad thing. Sometimes people would like to hold on their properties, and DSTs isn't for everyone. Maybe it's not for them if they want to have full control over the property. Interests are not liquid, and the time of sale is generally set by the trustee. Typically, DSTs will hold no more than 10 years, and typically they sell between years 5 and 7. There's no rule about this, but typically it's because you cannot refinance out of a DST, and therefore every commercial loan is typically for 10 years. So by years 5 to 7, the trustee is thinking, hey, is this the good year to sell? We've had properties sell within 3 years, even giving an investor, gosh, that one was 3 years ago, giving an investor 40% returns year over year for the 3 years that they held in. So sometimes when you have an offer that's too good to refuse, they will go ahead and sell the property, in which at that time your client can do another 1031 exchange into a single family or any like-kind property or another DST. The properties must be fully capitalized up front. So again, you don't have to qualify for the loan. All cash other than necessary reserves must be distributed on a current basis, which means at the end of the year, besides the needed reserves to keep the property healthy and running, they have to distribute all of the rents to the owners, because technically you guys are a percentage owner as a DST holder. Trustee is limited to making capital expenditures for only normal repair, maintenance. So it's very, very clear as to what the trustee is able to do and not able to do. And then again, only able to be purchased by accredited investors. Here's some DST trends. In 2015, it was at 1.1 billion. Now, more recently in 2019, it's grown to 3.4 billion. 30% of all DSTs are coming from California. And that is mainly because it's really hard to get the cash flows in California where it makes sense anymore. And so we're seeing a lot of 1031 exchanges and moving the assets out of California, with the owners still remaining and residing in California for the most part. Here is DSTs by asset class. So again, DST is just a form of ownership, right, as an entity. And so it can basically, you can structure a DST for anything. Usually they're used by institutions of properties between, I would say, 30 to 150 million. And so a large section of DSTs is still student housing. They perform very, very well. We see some office, industrial. We have some Amazon warehouses in this industrial space currently. Student housing, I wouldn't recommend student housing right now. It kind of took a tumble last year, but that historically did well as well. That's the breakdown. And so I want to leave with some key takeaways, for you guys as you kind of embark on this journey for the rest of the year, to study and take advantage of changing strategic trends. And so learn where the transactions are increasing and consider adjusting your plans accordingly. The real estate agent that I worked with in 2019, we paused in 2020 because of the pandemic, and we're picking it back up because she understands that, there's no inventory anywhere. And so if there's even just one rental property owner who decides, well, I kind of want to sell high, would be a good market to get into. Augment your skills and expand your network by partnering. So we can help reserve DSTs prior to closing. There's a 100% chance of closing for qualified investors. And then you can give your clients a peace of mind that they do have a clear cut exit strategy for their exchange. And they will basically be able to defer all capital gains and likely double their income. Apply your personal skills and combine resources of your team to solve the most pressing of your clients. And so the way that we help our clients is obviously to alleviate their pain points. Oh, typo, sorry, pain points. And that way we can win the listing and also win their business. Right, so I think, so here's what we can partner in. We can do the discovery call, rental property analysis, 1031 exchange. And then we also have really, really good tax advisors for people who have massive portfolios. If you think about it, we're pretty much top 1% of the country, right? So that means only probably top 1% of tax professionals really know how to service these types of high net worth and wealthy clients. And so we have a lot of these advisors that work with portfolios of anywhere between 5 to 500 million. So if you need any of those resources, feel free to reach out. Here are, besides the 1031 exchange, we also have, ability to help on different real estate arena. I know, real estate is a huge industry and it can get pretty lonely out here. So here are a few other ways I can help outside of the 1031 exchange. I've often co-listed commercial real estate properties with realtors who would like to leverage the credibility of our firm, GD Commercial, as well as my commercial real estate expertise. We also have interesting alternative investment deals with some of the largest developers in the Bay Area, where you or your clients can participate in helping to build apartments, hotels, luxury homes, franchise expansions, the list goes on here. And so for closing notes, before we get into Q&A, I'd like to encourage all of you as real estate professionals and experts in our field to start thinking about how you can leverage your own knowledge in real estate to level up and potentially become a sophisticated investor yourself. So good luck out there. It's a beautiful market. I don't know how long it's going to last, but I'm super excited to be able to potentially help you and your clients to really take advantage of this amazing seller's market. And for anyone who's interested, you can email me for a digital copy of Paul's best-selling book. Paul Getty is part of the Getty family. He is really well known in his space. He's built everything from single-family homes in Cupertino all the way to large retail centers in Texas. We are here in San Jose, and he has written the best-selling book about DSTs. And so he is the founder of First Guardian Group. If you'd like a copy, I'd be happy to introduce you and have you guys be able to download a virtual book from him. And so here is my contact information, and that would be the end of my presentation. So we can go ahead and open up for Q&A. I know we probably have about 10 minutes left.
Michelle?
Hi. Yeah.
Oh, hi. I'm sorry, was someone else talking?
No, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Michelle. This is Yvonne. Thank you so much. A lot of great info.
Hi, Yvonne.
Hi. On behalf of one of my colleagues at our office, she has a 9-plex in Santa Clara. And I was just wondering if you could help with that, something like that. If, let's say we already have a current listing, it's priced a bit high, so we're not getting a ton of activity right now, but I was just wondering, can your team help with that somehow?
Yeah, we can basically share. Is it already on the MLS?
Yes.
Okay, what's the property address?
Oh, shoot, it's on LinkedIn. I don't have it quite memorized. I can email it to you. Actually, I prefer her to contact you. She's just not on this call, so I'm just kind of speaking for her. It's a colleague at the office that I'm working with.
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like, what might be a good idea is have her email me the listing and then I can see how I can help. So there's usually two ways whenever there's a commercial listing is to contact, all of our commercial investors who do basically already own properties that are similar to that and see if they would like to add to their portfolio. Another thing that I can help do potentially is basically an investors list. And so I'm not sure if a 9plex is big enough, but what we do have is access to CoStar. I think maybe some of the KW agents might have it too, but we can pull a list of all of the owners of similar properties and you guys could cold call them and see, if they're interested or contact them and see if they would like
Great.
to. Mhm.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll call you, okay, and set up an appointment. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, my pleasure.
I have a couple questions. I appreciate the presentation. It was fantastic information. I just real quick, if you could just go over the minimum requirements again, real quick for an investor.
Absolutely. So the only requirement is that you are an accredited investor. And so you can qualify in two ways. One is being your net worth. So you have to have a net worth of $1 million or more, not including your primary residence. So this is typically, the retired investor who's amassed a good portfolio of rental properties. All their rental properties can be included, just not their primary residence. The other way to qualify, which is more for maybe working professionals who are still accruing or accumulating their portfolio and their assets, is through the income. And so your gross income just has to be over 200,000 as an individual, or 300,000 if you're married filing jointly. And so we don't ask for any backup information. There's only one sponsor who's super strict, who will basically ask that, the investor have their tax professional just write a letter saying, yes, this investor is indeed an accredited investor based upon, my understanding of their assets, and they don't have to have any proof. And so it's a self-accreditation type of structure where, we have you fill out a client information sheet saying, here are all my assets, here are all my liabilities, and this is my net worth. Or you just say, here is basically how I make my income. It's a W-2 and I make $250,000 a year. Easy.
Okay, this might be a little bit out of the scope here, but I have somebody who has 3 homes. They're all single family homes in the Santa Cruz area. 2 are rental properties and 1 is the primary residence. This person is going to be retiring quite soon and maybe looking to move out of the area and currently is doing all of the property management himself. This might be something right up his alley. Is there a strategy to roll his primary residence into that package? Would he have to vacate that property and rent it? Is there some way that you know of that
Yeah.
might be possible?
Absolutely. So he can utilize this really popular strategy that a lot of people do utilize when they have an owner occupied. So most tax professionals will basically say, as long as you have, records of you renting out the property for over 2 tax years. And so 2 tax years means it could be 6 months, right? If people are being aggressive. And so 2 tax years means if I rented out my property today, in April until next March, that's 2 tax years because it's 2021 and 2022. And
Okay.
so what you would want to do for your client who has that owner occupied property is they would want to rent it out for 2 tax years and basically file their income taxes showing that they have rented it out. Now, after
Okay.
that, what they can do is they can take advantage of both the 1031 exchange and the 121 homeowners exemption, right? So for example, with the 121 homeowners exemption, you can basically write off. Is he married, by the way, or is he single?
Yes, married.
Married. Okay, so you get $500,000 right? So he
Mhm.
might not even need to do an exchange depending on um, how much he purchased the property for in the beginning.
Okay.
And so if, let's say, his capital gains is over 500,000 for his owner occupied, because, there's no reason to do a 1031 exchange if you don't have to, right?
Mhm. Sure.
So he can basically sell his primary residence without paying any capital gains tax, as long as that capital gains is within the $500,000 exemption.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. I haven't looked at his financials, but that I will definitely take a look at that. And I really liked your PowerPoint presentation. Do you have something that you might offer agents so for us to kind of sell this product to our clients, like a slideshow or something along those lines?
Yeah. So I can send over a brochure that has all the information, and that way you could just like put it into your listing package, right? Or
Okay.
you can send a PDF to them. It should be really easy. And what I find that is most helpful is getting kind of a Zoom, kind of very similar to today's presentation, but like shortened, to
Mhm.
a 15-minute type of conversation, just to have them understand that DST is an option in case they can't find another replacement property.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Zach.
Any other questions?
Yes, hi, Michelle. I have a quick question. So when you come across an investor who wants to sell a few of his properties and wants to do kind of like what you described, so the very first step, the client discovery call, are you in that call, or can we introduce you to them, or how you usually handle those? The introduction?
Yeah. So the way that I work with you guys is you basically let me know when the client's available, and then I'll shoot you over a Zoom call. So you're still the main point of contact for everybody, but I will basically play support, right? So every single email you guys are CC'd on after the call, but you are the one who sets up the initial meeting. And basically what I'll do is I'll probably come up with a few questions that you want to ask them so that we can get the property analysis, the rental property analysis kind of going, or I can also introduce and ask them those questions during the analysis by showing them what, how powerful it might be for them to understand where their current situation is versus where we can take them, right?
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us today and providing all that information. Really appreciate it. And I know you've given them all your contact info as well so that they can stay in touch with you. So hopefully we have some future partnerships created with you.
That sounds great. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. And thank you, everyone. I appreciate the time.
All right. Thank you. And it's okay. Did I lose her already? Did she
No,
go?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. You turned your thing off.
Yeah.
We recorded this. So is that okay that we share it with our agents afterwards?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. If I can get a copy of that too,
All right.
it'll help me
Well,
too.
that'll be fine. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.